Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Coon. And he offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now, you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's right, and this is one area. It's a very long tour where you visit 4 different places.
Okay, and so today he'll be educating us on his tour of the burial grounds of South Hadley Center. Tell us about the old South Hadley burial ground.
All right, now, the oldest cemetery in South Hadley is called the Old South Hadley Burial Ground. It was where the Gaylord Library is now on College Street on Route 116. It took up the whole space so that it came right from where the sidewalk is on the road all the way back to the back fence of the library. And then it spread out all the way to the nearest dormitory and all the way to where there's a planetarium. So it was enormous. There's 1,500 barrels in there. When Evergreen was made, maybe 200 barrels were moved into Evergreen in the 1880s. When they wanted to start to move this cemetery from 1902 to 1903 to 1904, they did it in portions such that the families were moved first. Then some of the individuals where people showed up, and descendants of the deceased showed up and wanted them buried individually. And then there was 1904. There was about 480 people left, and they buried them in the very back of the Evergreen. So the old South Hadley burial ground started with a burial of a child, and then the next burial was John Preston, the founder of South Hadley, and the family refused to have him moved from the cemetery because he was first, and so he was left back there, and we'll cover that later. And this is a very nice cemetery. Why was it moved? Because the Gaylord family wanted to put a library in there, and they said under condition that they would do that only if the cemetery was moved. So that's why it happened. But this was a movement across the whole United States to get rid of old cemeteries and move them into back of nicer looking cemeteries. Now, I don't agree with this because old cemeteries are now back in vogue and people love to walk through them. And they disrupted the natural look of the old cemetery. But, you have to deal with what you have.
Now tell us about Evergreen Cemetery.
All right, this started in 1868. It's kind of mostly a lawn cemetery, but it has some properties of a garden cemetery. And like I just said, it received almost 1,500 burials from the old South Hadley burial ground along the way. And so its character was defined very early on by some removals in the 1880s, and then a lot of removals in 1902, and 1903, and 1904. So this changeover was drastic to define what Evergreen's going to look like. Now the modern parts are going in along the southern edge. It seems to fit in. And of course some moderns spread out also along the midsection towards the back west. There is a triangle section where a house was that they bought up, and that section someday might be filled in. So it's a very historic cemetery. It looks older. It seems older than it really is because all this movement of very old stones into it.
So quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or want to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you are interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. and they are perfect for fun educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. They're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, tell us about the Mary Lyon grave.
All right, if you want to get to this location, you have to go onto the campus of Mahoney College, go in the main gate, and go down that road maybe about 180 yards or so. And what you'll find on the left-hand side is a wrought iron gate surrounding a tombstone. Mary Lyon was the foundress and a teacher at the Mahoney Seminary, which became Mahoney College. And when she died of a very rare blood disease, they buried her on the grounds of the campus. Now, this was the second seminary she had found. She found Wheaton also. But this was the one that she truly loved a lot and taught at through most of her middle-aged life. And you can walk around her tombstone and read all the quotes on each side. And of course, this is sacred ground because she's such an important person, not only to South Hadley, not only to the United States, but to the whole world, because there's so many students now from the whole world.
So tell us about John Preston's gravestone.
Now, John Preston was the founder of South Hadley. He got permission from the government of Hadley to pull out deeds for land in the south part of the range, the mountain range, called the Mountain Range. And he died a few years after he came here. Apparently he caught a cold and he never got better. And he was buried, the second burial, in the old South Hadley burial ground, which most people believe is his part, his land that he deeded out to South Hadley. Now, in 1902, when the town wanted to remove the old South Hadley burial grounds deceased, they had to get permission from anyone they could find in that family. And John Preston's family did not give their permission. They said that since he founded the gravestone, South Hadley, he founded the cemetery. He was a very important person that they could move him within the cemetery, but not out of the cemetery. Whereas all the other people gave permission to move him out of the cemetery. So he's left behind, and you can find him back beyond a pine tree in the back of the Gaylord Library. John Preston's tombstone is getting worn out, but you can still read. And he is still important because his legacy lived on as his sons and grandsons and great-grandchildren kept living in South Hadley, improving South Hadley. So thank you for listening to this great tour. I hope you come on it someday.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's HolyokeCanalTour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in. So today we'll be discussing the burial grounds of South Hadley throughout its history. Now, there are many locations where people are buried in South Hadley, Mass. So what are the various types of cemeteries in South Hadley?
All right, there's the Catholic ones and the Protestant one and Native American ones. There's garden style. There's a lot of lawn style ones. There's churchyard ones. There's no family ones really, so the St. Rose and the Precious Blood Cemetery, along with Notre Dame and the Rosa cemeteries, they're all in the lawn style cemetery. The churchyard one is the old South Hadley burial ground, which is now with only one grave, and that's at the Gaylord Library. That was a churchyard because the church was right next to it, the very old church. It doesn't seem like one, but the church is long gone. All right, next question.
Now, so you want to give us an example of each of them?
Yeah, some more examples are the Cooley Chapin was a former family cemetery, but it was moved from High Street. It had two families, the Cooley and Chapin, maybe 20 barrels were there. Another one was the old Pine Grove Cemetery, which was in South Hadley on the southern edge of Chicopee, and that was moved in 1850 and then in 1888, and it was a churchyard cemetery with some family properties too, because it had the Lamb family with a churchyard. And then there are many Catholic ones are all in lawn style, and then the Protestant one that's large is the Falls Cemetery, which is a lawn one, and then the one called Evergreen, which is a lawn one also.
And so this is a presentation and not a tour. So what are some of the features that are covered?
I covered the year that it started, the year that it might have been moved. I also cover what type it is, and also little features like the Pine Grove one was started in South Hadley, ended up in Chicopee because the county border was moved, and then the whole cemetery was moved twice. First, about 20 to 30 barrels moved to the South Hadley Falls Cemetery, and then 23 barrels were moved in 1888 to the Chicopee Street burial ground. Incredible that you would have these little features.
Now, what is your favorite cemetery and how come?
The Precious Blood Cemetery is my favorite, and the reason why is because you have the parishioners that died in the 1875 fire in Holyoke. 70 people died from that fire. 48 were buried there within the week. Then another 10 were buried there in the coming days after they died. And then 12 were buried elsewhere. But it's beautiful to go to that cemetery and read the inscriptions on a beautiful plaque they have there. And they also have a nice Spanish-American double grave there, which is Bonneville and Duguay. And I'm amazed that it still exists, but you can still barely read it now. So that's my favorite cemetery.
Okay, and thank you again. And again, you can check out his website at holycanaltour.org and check out some of his other tours, photos, videos, and podcasts. Thank you for joining our podcast.